Leave It to Beaver. Starring Barbara Billingsley, Hugh Beaumont, Tony Dow, and Jerry Mathers as the Beaver.
All right. You guys are in for a real treat this afternoon. From 1957 to 1963, my guest this afternoon entered the hearts and homes of America as one of the most beloved characters in the history of television, playing Theodore Cleaver for 6 seasons on the iconic television show Leave It to Beaver. The show quickly gained national attention and is still in syndication today in countries around the world and can be heard in 52 languages. And it also has become the longest-running scripted television show in history, making my guest today, Jerry Mathers, an American icon. I'm so thrilled to have this gentleman on the show this afternoon. Beaver Cleaver himself, Hollywood icon Jerry Mathers. First of all, Jerry, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
My pleasure, Mike. Glad to do it.
I don't think I'll at any point in my life I'll ever be this cool again, talking to the Beaver.
Oh, I think you're always cool.
Well, hi-yo. Jerry.
The cucumber.
Jerry, again, thank you so much. But walking through a department store with your mother, this all began.
Right, but I don't remember much about it. My dad was a coach at the time. He retired as a superintendent of LA City Schools, but he was coaching at a private high school. So my mom was kind of looking for bargains and looking for clothes for me. And a lady came up to her and said, "Is this your little boy?" And she thought, "Wait a minute, did he touch something? Did he break something? Uh-oh." And the lady said, "No, but you've tried on quite a few outfits on him, and we noticed he fits our sizes perfectly. Could he be a model for us in our fashion show?" And my mom was from Minnesota. My dad was from Iowa, but they'd lived here for quite a few years. So she kind of went, "Well, I really don't know." And the lady said, "Well, if he could do that, we would pay him, and he could keep the clothes he wore." And my mom said he could do that.
And so you went into modeling first.
Modeling at 2 years old. But what a lot of people don't realize, because this was quite a few years ago, this was about 1950, TV was just starting then.
Right.
So in Hollywood, they had mostly movie actors that were children, and movies were all done on film. So when they were looking for a child that worked in front of a live audience, they went, well, there aren't any. In New York, they could go to the Broadway stage. So when they looked out here, they said, well, the models, walk out and they do little turns and walk around, and, maybe he could do it. And so I started out on a Lux Video Theater and started doing live TV at 2 years old, a little bit over, up 2.5 maybe, and went on from there. And then I did a lot of movies. I worked with Bob Hope, Alan Ladd, all over the place, Alfred Hitchcock. And then I got Leave It to Beaver in 1957.
What do you remember about if anything, about working with Hitchcock?
It was really fun. I mean, he was a very, very nice man. I used to, I've learned in, years past that a lot of actors were very afraid of him, and he was supposed to be, very tough on actors.
Right.
But I used to sit on his lap and he'd run the lines with me. We went to Stowe, Vermont. It was called Trouble with Harry. And so I went back there, the whole crew. And so it was more of a bonding experience, because when you're working at a studio, you're on a stage and everything. Back then, we were, more of a company of people together. So, he'd run my lines with me.
So you get an audition for Leave It to Beaver, but you like you say, you had some work under your belt. You wasn't like just some kid just off the street. You had some work under your belt.
No, I had worked live TV, but that was the really first. I'd done a few other little really small parts in movies, but that was the first time I had not a starring role, but a major role in a movie.
How did you even know about the audition? Did you have any representation?
Oh yeah, as soon as I started working, my mom, there were agents all over, and they were very anxious for kids that were working, and so my mom got an agent immediately, and we used to go to a lot of interviews, and you got some, but a lot of times it was what the parents looked like, so they'd look at you if they were looking for a blonde little boy. Obviously, I didn't make it. And there was 3 or 4 other little boys that were blonde, but there were probably maybe 15 or 20 of us kids that would fit most ethnic groups.
How many kids, if you remember, how many kids actually auditioned for the role of Beaver?
I don't know this for a fact, but I've been told between 300 and 500.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that was not only in Los Angeles or in Hollywood, but it was also in New York and Chicago, because they made it a United States type call where they had agents bringing kids in, and you'd go in. It went on, and I would go in every time, and they'd have a different little scene. And then even after I got the job, I didn't know I had the job, but they kept calling me back because they kept looking for a Wally. So that took about another probably 3 or 4 weeks. We did the original pilot, and the boy that they had picked to play Wally, between the time the pilot was done and then we went into the filming of the show, he grew about 6, I guess, or 7 inches. I honestly don't really remember a whole lot about him, but suddenly he was too big. He was almost as tall as Hugh Beaumont. So then they went out and got Tony Dow, and he played the part on the show for the whole 6 years it was on.
Well, and then Eddie Haskell and Lumpy, everybody came later, or they were part of the same crew?
They all came about that same time when they cast Tony. I don't think any of them. It's been a long time since I saw that show, but they were all very, very good actors, and they all started, I know, on the first season, which was 1957.
And tell me if this is true or not, but when you went to the audition, you had like a little edge, you had a little attitude, and the producers...
Well, I did. I had important places to go because I had just joined the Cub Scouts, and my mom, said, "Oh, Jerry, we've got an interview today." And I said, "Well, I can't go." And she said, "What do you mean you can't go?" And I said, "Well, I have my Cub Scout meeting." And she said, "Well, this is really important because they've seen you in another movie that I'd done. I had a fairly small part, and they wanted to see me." And so my mom said, "Well, this won't take very long because they've already looked at you." I'd been on the interview once before, I don't know how many times before, and they'd seen me, and this was the callback when they were right down to the final people. So I said, "Well, okay, as long as I'll be there." And so when I went in there, I'm the kind of person who always wants to be on time, even as a kid. And so I was very antsy, and they said, "Jerry, we talked to you a couple times before, but today you seem..." I don't know if they said nervous or just, and I said, "Well, yeah, because if I don't leave here very quickly, I'm going to be late for my Cub Scout meeting, and I don't like to be late for anything." They said, "Okay, you can go." So all the other kids, and there weren't that many of them, had walked in and spent quite a bit of time in there because it was the final interview. And they called that night and said I had the job because they'd rather have a kid that wanted to go to a Cub Scout meeting than be an actor.
Wow, isn't that? These are the great behind-the-scenes stories that a lot of people don't know about.
Absolutely.
Can you talk about meeting Hugh Beaumont and Barbara Billingsley for the first time? If you remember, what did you remember first about them?
What I remember first about them was that Barbara Billingsley was on the original pilot, and a pilot is what you do before you start the series. They take it out to sell it, and they show it to all the advertisers. But Hugh Beaumont, I had done about probably 5 to maybe 8 weeks before that, I had done a public service announcement with Hugh Beaumont, who I'd never met before that. And so they brought in all these different fathers, and I was going to school there at the time at the studio because they were already getting ready to do the show. And so I would walk in, and they'd, talk to me, and then they'd put me next to this father, and we'd run like one script from the scene, which was probably a minute or 2 minutes, just to see how we interacted. And for some reason, I just really liked Hugh Beaumont. He was just a very nice man. What a lot of people don't know about him, he was a Methodist minister, and he had started working as an actor just so he could support this very poor church that he was in down in a really bad part of L.A., so he was just a very, very nice person, and we just got along for the rest of the time. I worked with him very, very well.
Yeah, he seemed like a nice guy. I seen him in a lot of B movies. He did a lot of B movies as well.
That's the funny part, because for a minister, it's not the best thing to always play a bad guy.
You're right.
He wasn't. He was a detective, and he was the kind of detective that he didn't tell him the truth. He pounded you against the wall. He grabbed you by the collar and put you up against the wall and went, "You better tell me the truth." But he was just the kindest, nicest person. That wasn't anything like his real personality.
And how about Barbara Billingsley? Because she came like more sort of a mentor towards you, even in your adult age.
Oh yeah, she was always a very, very good friend, like your favorite teacher or principal or whatever. And she was a New York model. She'd done some acting, but not a whole lot. But she was a very, very highly rated, very tall, blonde lady who was a model. And so the whole cast got along. Now, in the original pilot, the only person that they replaced was the Wally character, but that was only because he grew to be like 6 feet, and he was taller than Hugh Beaumont when he came back to do the show. And so they got Tony Dow, who he'd done one other thing before Leave It to Beaver. It was something I think called Johnny Wildlife.
Yeah, I actually had him on. I had him on a little while ago. He's like,
okay, so then he was a AAU swimmer and diving champion, and that's what they were looking for, a very athletic kid, but he'd only done one.
Yeah, like nothing.
Not even a show. He'd done a pilot for a series that never sold, so he was kind of the newbie on the set.
That's amazing.
I've been working since I was 2.
You're a senior guy, as they say.
I was a senior guy, but he was the big brother, and he was a very, very nice fellow, and we always got along very well.
Jerry, filming the show itself, I mean, how many cameras did they use to film the scenes?
It was filmed just like a movie. It was filmed on, just like you'd film a movie that you would go and see at the, at the theater. And we would rehearse for 2 days, and then we would, for the next 3 days, we would film on 35 millimeter film. And it was just, a big cast of, the people on the show, and any person that was on it. And then we had probably a crew of about 70 people, 75 people between the camera, lightings, makeup, wardrobe, props, all those different people. So, and we filmed 39 a year.
That's a lot.
We did that for 6 years, and we pretty much kept the same crew. I mean, some people, of course, sadly died, and a lot of people, moved on to other things because we'd only filmed for 39 weeks. Then they might go to another show, and if that show was still filming, it was hard for them to get off. But for the most part, we kept the whole crew for the entire show.
The writing was great. The writing was always wholesome stories, seen through the Beaver's eyes, point of views. Talk a little bit about the writers, Bob Mosher and Joe Connolly.
Well, they were very, very, prominent writers. What they had written for mostly before, though, they'd done a few series, not series really, but just different television and movie things. But they were really Amos and Andy on radio. And so that's what they had done for many, many years before that. So I really didn't know this, but Amos and Andy, before it was on TV, which I saw as a kid, was one of the most popular, if not the most popular radio show. And they did like a 15 or 20-minute little thing every day. So they were writing scripts every day for Amos and Andy. And it was, a lot of work. And so they decided to go into television, and Leave It to Beaver was really their first kind of, they kind of expanded and started doing a television show. So it was the first thing that they'd ever really done in the television arena.
I mean, did they ever ask for your input? I mean, you and Tony Dow, as he was a teenager, how would you play this? How would you say this, Jerry?
Not really, but I think what they did more was just watch us. So if we did anything, they heard us using any kind of, what would you call it, something that wouldn't be in their vernacular, that would be in our vernacular.
Right.
As kids, they might write it in. And Joe Connolly had, I think it was 7 or 8 kids, and Bob Mosher had, I think, 4. So they were pretty aware of what kids were doing, and they also looked at all their kids and talked to the other parents that they knew, and found out all the different kinds of things that might be funny to put into a TV show. And of course, it was usually expanded a lot and changed, but most of the shows in some way are from real life.
Right. Some of the storylines there, they really captured the middle America. Hugh Beaumont, for instance, what was the reasoning behind why they actually never told the audience what he did for a living? Was there a reasoning behind it?
I think they always thought that there may be a show when they wanted to say he did something and they didn't want to lock themselves in. They wanted him not to be, I hate to say it, but something like, he wasn't like a dock worker or a cashier at some place. They knew you had a coat and tie on every day. But, if there came a show where they wanted to say he was a stockbroker or a banker or, whatever he was, I think they didn't want to lock themselves in.
Yeah, no, interesting. He was always pristine, polished,
Well, he was always like that anyway. And what he really was a Methodist minister. So, he just took the show. He did not Leave to Beaver, but before that, he was Michael Shane in the movie.
Right,
Did you ever
right.
see Michael Shane?
Yes,
He was really a tough guy. I mean, he put two people and knocked them up against the wall for confessions. But the church he had was so small that they just couldn't afford, they couldn't support him. So he had to become an actor during the week so he could preach. When he got Leave It to Beaver, I think that was, the perfect place for him. When you take Beaver in and talk to him, I think that's probably the way he talked to a lot of his parishioners.
For those of you tuning in right now, joining me on the phone is Jerry Mathers, the Beaver himself, played Theodore Cleaver for 6 seasons on the hit television show Leave It to Beaver. Jerry, so when did the scripts come out? I mean, what was the, early, first couple of days, did you guys do rehearsals? How did it work?
Well, each show was done in 1 week. On Friday, we would quit the last show. We would have the weekends off. Monday morning, Tony and I would come in at 8 o'clock, and we'd go to school till 11 with our private tutor, which we had all week. Then the other actors would come in, and we would go in for a reading at 11, and we would just read through the script. When I was the first 2 years, I did not participate in it. I was sitting there, and then at the end, they'd come over to me and kind of talk to me, and they'd say, did anything sound funny to you? Is there anything that you probably wouldn't say or anything? After that, when I was in, I guess it must have been probably the 3rd or 4th grade, I would read my own lines. You didn't have, obviously, the same exact way you were going to say it on the stage because it just, you were just sitting around. And on Tuesday, we would go in and rehearse it, and we would go to the actual sets, and the director would block it, and the cameraman and the head lighting director were there so they could set up in advance. And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we would shoot. The kids would shoot from 8 till 5, and then the adults, because it was kind of a rush, would have to stay there after, and they'd go back and do their close-ups and other shots and any other scenes that they had by themselves. So they might be there till they'd usually have dinner there. We would leave at either 5 or 6. If we came in on Monday because it was a short day, we'd come in at 9 and go to school a little bit longer, and then they'd read the script once, and then we were done for the day. And Tuesday we'd rehearse, and the next 3 days we'd shoot.
Interesting. Fonzie from Happy Days had a very iconic leather jacket. Okay, I believe it's in the Smithsonian, if I'm not mistaken. The hat that the Beaver wore, it's got a little story behind it that I don't think my audience knows. Maybe you could tell my audience a little bit about that hat that you wore.
Well, it was raining. It was, I think it was October, or maybe a little bit before that. But anyway, it's still the rainy season out here in California, and we've been on this interview quite a few times because they started. They asked for 2 brothers, and we didn't know it at the time, but they also were casting like Whitey and Larry and Eddie Haskell. So you'd go into this interview, and there were just kids every age, and everybody's going, this is crazy. And we'd sit there for, sometimes an hour or two and go in, and they'd look at you, and then they'd say, okay, now you can go home. What we didn't know is they'd already picked me, and then they were looking for people to be my friends and to be, the big brother and other people on the show. So that went on for quite a while, and we were kind of thinking, what is this, But the hat was something that, because it was raining, my mom just happened to put on me, and I kept wearing it back because it was kind of inclement weather, because we were going almost every day. What we didn't know is they were trying to cast people that, were my same size to be my friends. They'd already picked me, but they didn't tell us that. So when we started shooting, they said, well, where's his hat? My mom said, well, again, this is wardrobe, and his hat's with his stuff. When he came in, he changed into it. And they said, no, we want that hat. I told the wardrobe guy, go out and find his hat. And he looked at the hat, and he goes, okay, it was just a green baseball cap, but he could not find one. And so for the whole time, it was like a big game because he had to always watch me because that was the only hat they had. Like our wardrobe, everything you have was backed up 3 to 5 times. So if you spilled something at lunch on yourself or, got dirt on yourself,
they had
even the adults,
one.
that just wasn't because we were kids. But the hat, they couldn't find another one that looked, and it was also worn. It wasn't that they couldn't find a green hat. They couldn't find a green hat that was worn like that one. And so my mom kept it, and I still have it. I have a safe in my house, and it's in the safe in my house.
Wow. Could you leave the set with the hat on, or did you have to...
No. The wardrobe man watched that hat like a hawk. In fact, when I was working, he had it there when the scene started soon as the director said cut and I walked off the set, he took it until I was back on for the next shot that it had to be in.
Wow.
Because, it wouldn't have matched, and they couldn't find, because it was such a weird color green. My mom doesn't really know where she got it. As I said, I think it was misty or raining, and she just said, I need a hat for him, or his hair will get all wet when he goes on the interview. She just grabbed it from a closet someplace in our house and put it on me, and that was it.
Wow. That's a funny story. That's a funny story. Jerry, I'm sure a lot of people tell you about one of their, even for myself, the famous episode with the Soup Bowl.
They had gotten a script and they liked it and they started making it, and suddenly they realized, gee, there are no billboards on the back lot of Universal. And so they had to build a billboard with a big soup bowl sticking out of it on the back lot. But that, I think, is probably the episode that most people, when they think of the show, at least when they come up and talk to me about it, remember. They remember other ones like the alligator one and different ones. But that's the one they always remember, is the Soup Bowl one.
Because it cost a ton of money.
But it was the most expensive one they ever did.
Wow.
Yeah. Or your favorite teacher, Every week there were different people. I had a crew, and, it was just really nice people. They made sure that the crew, I hate to say this, but they all were family people. And so they kind of made sure that they all had kids so they could work around a kid. And, it was fun when we weren't going either to school because I had a private tutor or working on the show. They built us a little basketball court, and we used to shoot baskets with the prop man and the lighting people, and then they'd go to work and we'd go shoot, and then they'd come back. But, it was just a real nice family atmosphere. In fact, everybody on the show that was the crew were family people, and so it was one of the best shows to be on because pretty much we could only work 8 to 5 or 9 to 6, and they'd do a couple, maybe a half hour or 45 minutes after that to go back and catch up on some of the parents' stuff, and then they all went home. A lot of those shows that had all adults were, there till 8 or 9 at night.
Everybody growing up had an Eddie Haskell in their clique. You'd be giving a wedgie to somebody, and then the mother would come, "Oh, hi, Mrs. Smith. How are you? You look lovely today." Talk a little bit about Ken Osmond, who played Eddie Haskell. Was he anything like that character in real life?
Oh, absolutely not. Nicest guy you'd ever want to meet. Decorated, shot in the line of duty, L.A. police officer. By choice. He was a skinny little guy. If you see him on the show, I know he doesn't look that skinny, but he is really skinny. He was a motorcycle cop in the worst part of downtown L.A. He said that he saw bodies, a lot of bodies, at least a few every week of people that were passed away from usually nefarious conditions. So just nothing like Eddie Haskell at all. And he's the kind of guy that, if you ever need help on anything, he was a great mechanic. He was always building cars. And if you ever needed help, one time I was painting my house when I was doing the new Leave It to Beaver. I said, he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I have to go home because I have to paint my house." He said, "I'll come over and help you." Just that kind of a guy. You could never ask him or tell him anything because he wanted to come over and help you, and just, the nicest fellow you'd ever want to meet. And
how's he doing? Because I asked Tony Dow, and he says his health's some health issues.
Yeah, he has a few health issues. He's sad to say one of his, drawbacks, but it was a lot of people's during those times. He was a heavy smoker, and he was a police officer, so he was spending long hours and a lot of hours up at night and stuff. So he's not in the best of health, but the longer we can keep him with us, the better I'll like it.
Yeah, he's an iconic character, just like yourself. Jerry, I'd be remiss if I never mentioned this gentleman because he was on Gus the Fireman, Burt Mustin, such a great character. You see him on the Andy Griffith Show. You got to have a little story about Burt Mustin.
Well, he was just the nicest person you ever want to meet. The first show he probably did was Leave It to Beaver because he had done a lot of things, but he was a stockbroker before and never really worked as an actor. So he didn't start working as an actor until his 60s. And he just was a kind of very active, really quick mentally, and decided that when he retired, he had to go back and find something to do. And working as, an actor, and he was, I think, Petticoat Junction or a lot of those other shows he played.
A lot of stuff. Yeah,
he was, a typical, like a Midwesterner, and just a really nice fellow. And
if you ever look him up on IMDb, his resume was huge.
Yeah, but if you notice, it didn't start when he was 21.
Right, that's what I'm saying. For somebody who started off, he's like 60, 70 years old. It's crazy. He was died.
Yeah, that was it.
He was 92.
I think Leave It to Beaver was maybe the first show he ever did. It may be the second or third, but he had not worked a whole lot until he did Leave It to Beaver as an actor.
Yeah,
he went to a little theater, and he really liked it, and the little theater person told him, "Oh, they're looking for a fireman over on a TV show that's just starting called Leave It to Beaver." And he went, "Really?" And the guy said, "You want to come along?" I'm going. And on the interview, the other guy, who was the other actor who had done, I think, quite a few things. I don't really know because I never really met him. This is what Bert told me. And Bert got the job.
Yeah, he seemed like a very jovial kind of guy. He passed away at like 92.
Yeah, he was a very, very nice man, though.
God bless him. Jerry, so when you're on a hit show, like obviously Leave It to Beaver was a hit show for its day. You gotta go do press. You gotta go fly around the country and do press in New York, LA, wherever you gotta go. So you're at the Waldorf Astoria. I don't remember the year. And you get on the elevator. Do you remember who you saw in the elevator when you're in the Waldorf Astoria?
Yeah, it was General MacArthur.
Wow.
And I was always, my father was in World War II. He was a B-25 pilot, so I was always kind of fascinated with World War II, and I knew who he was, and my mom honestly didn't really know. And he had the penthouse there, so we were riding down in the elevator, and I was getting very excited. My mom's going, "What's wrong with Jerry? We're in an elevator," and he's just jumping, not jumping up and down, but and I'm pulling on there going, pointing to him, and he said hello, and I said hello, sir, and and then he walked out, and it wasn't a big conversation or anything, and I said, "Do you know who he is? Do you know who he is?" And my mom goes, "Do you?" And I said, "He's the man on the TV, the general." And my mom goes, "Huh?" And the elevator operator said, "You didn't know that was General MacArthur, who had a suite at the top of the hotel."
Wow, what a great story, huh? You don't see people like that too often, huh? Wow.
Not too often at all.
Jerry, again, when you're on a hit show like that, oftentimes you get typecast. After you left the show, I know you went on to do the new Leave It to Beaver and stuff, but did you want to keep going? Because
not really, because I'd been working if you look at my resume, I'd been working since I was 2 years old. So Leave It to Beaver wasn't just like for Tony Dow. That was the first thing he ever did.
Right,
he was a champion swimmer and diver, but I'd been working on live TV since I was 2. I'd worked with Hitchcock and did all these different movies and things. But I'd never been to a regular school. I had always had private tutors at the studio. So it just so happened that I finished Leave It to Beaver. I was just finishing the 8th grade. And it was a good time because if I had finished, say, the year before, I would have had to go on to an 8th grade class and everybody graduates. And my dad retired as superintendent, but he was at that time at a school that I used to go to all the football games for, and everything. Was a parochial school, and he was the coach of the football and the basketball team. So I was very involved in it, and it was Notre Dame High School, and I'd always said that that's where I wanted to go. I didn't think I was going to be able to because I'd had a private tutor, as I say, the whole time I was working up until high school. So I spent the next 4 years at Notre Dame High School, and I was on the football and the track team and the swim team.
Wow. Interesting. And so in 1983, from 1983 to 1989, you do Still the Beaver. How does Universal and Ted Turner end up losing $1 billion? How does that happen?
You tell me. Each one says what they do on those things is they have a print that is the house print that they keep, right, and they send it out. And it's the pristine copy, and it's all. And each one says this is the story that's told me. I don't know if it's true or not, but this is what they told us. That we lost it. That Ted Turner says, "No, I sent it back to Universal." Universal says, "No, we sent it to you and never got it back." And so, what can I tell you? I spent 6 years of my life, and thought it was supposed to be an hour, then like a book where they'd run a Leave It to Beaver and then the new Leave It to Beaver, and then every day. But never happened because it just disappeared.
Wow, there's like 100 episodes.
Yep, it was because that's the big key, and it was very not hard, but it was a lot of work because 100 means they can almost run an episode a day all year before they started, and people don't think, oh, I just saw that episode a week or two ago. So yeah, we spent quite a few years doing that. Shooting like 30 or 40 sometimes a year, and it was really fun though. I mean, to be able to go back and see Barbara Billingsley, Hugh Beaumont, sadly it passed, but Ken Osmond was there. We tried to get as many, but most of them honestly were had moved on and retired or passed away of the original crew. And it was just a really fun time to go back to Universal and do something that I'd done as a child, as an adult.
You actually got behind the camera in a few episodes.
Yes, I was the director. Tony and I both got our credentials from the Directors Guild of America. And, it's a lot of work being a director. I found out that not only do you have to know what you have to do, you have to figure out what everybody else is going to do. And it was a lot of fun, but, we could steer the show, and the producers really liked us because we had not a much better, but a really good feel for the show. And, if we were reading in the rehearsals, because we had 2 days of rehearsal, we'd say, this I don't think is what this character would say. And they'd say, you're probably right. And we'd talk about it. And sometimes we were wrong, and sometimes we were right.
Jerry, a lot of child actors, when the camera stops rolling and the fame is fading, they're typecast, they can't find work. Oftentimes they get involved with alcohol or drugs, and, they go down a dark road. Mostly for you guys, you and Tony as well. You guys didn't. Thank God that didn't happen to you guys. I mean, how'd you stay away from that kind of environment?
Well, I had a really good family life, and my dad was somebody who was very in touch with young people. He was, when I was doing Leave It to Beaver, vice principal and then principal of a high school in Los Angeles. In fact, the high school was one of the biggest ones in Los Angeles. So he was dealing with the best of kids and the worst of kids. And so, a lot of things I think that happened to kids at school, I was at working on a set, so that I wasn't exposed to those kind of things.
I mean, unfortunately, Stanley Fafara, played Whitey on the show.
Yeah.
And unfortunately passed away, but he had a hard life at the end. And, it's sad, but it does happen to a lot of child actors. And I know Paul Peterson's a big advocate, and he helps a lot of the child actors out.
Well, yeah, because, a lot of them, their parents, luckily my dad was fully employed. The people that Paul helps, a lot of times, their parents are totally living off them, and, they drive them there and sit there, and then the kid gets the money, and all of a sudden the show is over or whatever, and their parents have spent it all. But my dad, as I say, retired as a superintendent at LA schools, and I was doing Leave It to Beaver as a vice principal and principal. So he was fully employed. It wasn't like if I didn't work, my parents or my kid, my brothers and sisters wouldn't eat. We were a functioning family all the time. So, it's just a really fun thing, and it's something I like to do. And my parents always asked me, is this something you want to do another year? And I'd say, they want to do another year. I'd say, yeah, I have a good time there.
Right, because they wanted to go right after Leave It to Beaver went off the air. They wanted you to do another one or a television
show.
They
did, but that was a problem for me and that's why I didn't do it. It was my freshman year in high school, and I wanted to play football. So when I was doing the other, I was always in grade school.
Yeah, because you obviously, like you say, you never actually enjoyed a high school life,
Well, I did in high school because I would do things during the summer. I would go around and do personal appearances. But for the 4 years of high school, I went to. My dad had been a coach there. It was Notre Dame High School. He retired as superintendent, but when I was doing Leave It to Beaver, he was a coach, and I would go down there and watch him play at night and stuff. So I'd always wanted to go to this high school, so that's where I got to go, and a really good education. And I went on to Berkeley and have a degree in philosophy.
Wow, amazing! I did not know that about the Beaver. Very good, Jerry.
Yep.
Very good, Jerry. So you were always busy. So you weren't. You didn't. Thank God you didn't get into that other lifestyle. After the camera stopped rolling, you were busy with school, and you had a very good foundation at home as well, and that helps. That's a big help.
Spent 6 years in the military. So
yeah, that'll straighten you right out. Talk about Lumpy if you can a little bit, because he's still with us, right? Larry Mondello. Mondello, yes.
I don't know what happened to him. His parents, he started doing movies, and his parents moved to New York. I think his dad got transferred, and so he's only in about 2 or 3 seasons, and we just never really heard from him again.
Wow, I didn't know that. Wow, interesting. You never see him in any like signings or anything? He's never in any signings? I think I think he has some, but we're in Boston. I think he has some Boston ties. Could be wrong.
It's very, very possible, but, it's the kind of thing like when you go to high school or something with people.
Wow.
We just pretty much lost touch.
You've never have you? Has there ever been? I mean, I know you get the Hollywood show coming up at the end. When is that? The end of the month? The Hollywood. Yes. He's never been at any of these. You guys never had like a reunion type of thing?
No, not that I've seen him at. I don't think he's still here in Los Angeles. I really don't know. I mean, it's like people you went to high school with, or maybe even a bit more basically like elementary school. So it was just somebody. We did a season. He did a few movies, and his parents decided that they wanted him to be a movie actor, and I think they also thought he should go on the Broadway stage or something, but he just decided that Leave to Beaver wasn't his cup of tea anymore, and he just kind of moved on.
Interesting. Speaking of Broadway, Jerry, I mean, you're a Broadway aficionado. I mean, did you ever think you'd be in a musical on Broadway?
That would be one thing I would have to answer yes to. I never thought I would be. Not that, yes, I did, but no, I never thought I would be. But a guy came around, my agent came around and said, they're looking for a new Wilbur for Hairspray. Now, I had done dinner theater. That's what I used to do during the summers after Leave to Beaver finished, because honestly, it was a really fun thing for a young person to do, and I would go around to all these different cities, and you were there for 8 or 9 weeks, and you only worked at night, and you got to really kind of view the town and view the outlying areas. So it was really fun, and so I did have a background then, a little bit, nothing like Broadway, but stage work. Because before that, I started on live TV, but after that, I mostly worked on film.
Well, Jerry, this has been great, and thank you so much for doing this. You have a great reputation in the industry, and your wife does a great job. And even Tony, Tony
is.
is.
You had to tell her she's listening on the phone, and she just happened to pick it up just then and heard that. So say hi, Teresa.
Hi, Teresa.
Hi,
Teresa. Thank you so much for setting this up. You're a doll. And
oh my gosh, thanks so much. You did a great job. Great interview.
If you ever need another boost, just give me a call.
I will. Please, you're going to be at the Hollywood show from January 31st to February 1st. It's going to be at the L.A. Marriott in Burbank. Check out hollywoodshow.com for details. Who's going to be there? Is it going to be just you and Tony?
Oh, no. They'll probably they have usually, I can't even tell you, 50, maybe 100 different people from all different kinds of
it's a big deal.
Movies and TV.
It's a big deal, and I appreciate you're on. What are you doing now, Jerry?
Well, I'm pretty much retired.
Yeah.
I do autograph shows. I do personal appearances, but I've been working since I was 2 years old. So the kid needs a break.
No, you're but you brought so much joy to so many generations, and it continues. It does continue,
and my pleasure. Thank you for having me.